Well, fall's right around the corner, which means hunting season's right around the corner. But Dwayne, there's some things that hunters need to think about going into this hunting season with aflatoxins.
Right, so aflatoxin is produced by a fungus called aspergillus, and it grows on lots of different grains. When we have environmental stress, like droughty, late in the summer, some of this aspergillus will produce aflatoxin, which is toxic to not only wildlife, but also livestock.
What exactly does aflatoxin do to the wildlife?
So it causes a whole series of both chronic and acute toxicity problems, everything from lowered reproduction ability, so in other words, turkeys might lay fewer eggs, or it can cause immune problems. Animals can be more susceptible to disease. It can also be acute issues such as liver failure.
Now, do any of those issues actually impact from the, like for, you know, if people are going to want to be processing this game to eat? Is there any problems that could occur on that end?
Potentially, if the levels were high enough. I mean, this is why the FDA has very stringent requirements for grain that is being fed to livestock to make sure that, you know, those aflatoxin levels are not carried through the food chain. So that is a potential risk. The biggest risk for wildlife is just you know, health issues to them. And unfortunately, a lot of grain that folks are buying for wildlife either hasn't been tested or doesn't have as stringent requirements that's required for livestock feed. So that's something to really think about. Buying old moldy grain or cheap grain that is not up to those rigorous testing standards, you're putting wildlife at risk. If you do need to feed, make sure that you're buying grain that has been tested, and if you ask a reputable mill, they should be able to tell you that, what level the aflatoxins were. So think about that, and also you can think about buying alternative feeds where aflatoxin risk isn't there. Like if you're trying to supplement white-tailed deer, you can feed protein pellets instead of a grain that has carbohydrates in it. And
there's also the way that the grain can be distributed that can maybe decrease aflatoxins out in the environment as well, right?
Absolutely. So piling grain where it holds a lot of moisture is a bad practice. Aflatoxin, even if the grain starts off free of aflatoxin, the aspergillus, the fungus, it's in the air, it's all around us, so it can get in the grain once it's in the environment. So you want to spread that grain out, and you also want to minimize how much is on the ground at any one time. You shouldn't be putting a lot out at once. It should be an amount that can be eaten by wildlife within 3 or 4 days.
Now, and you actually have a fact sheet that people can go to if they're concerned about this.
Yeah, and it talks about spreading the grain, how long it's on the ground, buying aflatoxin-free grain to start with, and also different grains have different risk levels. Corn is much riskier than grain sorghum or milo is. So, you know, that's an alternative grain that could be used.
All right, thanks, Dwayne. Dwayne Elmore, Extension Wildlife Specialist here at Oklahoma State University. And if you'd like a link to the fact sheet he mentioned, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.